life, right? It's
Yeah.
just this constant flux. One minute you're feeling great, maybe a project went well, someone gives you praise, just genuine happiness. And the next, something just shifts, a setback, maybe some criticism really lands, or you just feel that ache of, pain or loss.
Absolutely. It's that roller coaster feel.
Yeah.
And it feels so fundamental.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's woven into the world itself, not just random stuff happening to you.
Well, that's where some ancient wisdom comes in. We're doing a deep dive today into a discourse that really tackles this, drawing from the final parts of a teaching called the Maṅgala Sutta.
A Maṅgala Sutta. Okay.
Yeah. Our source material explores how to navigate these, well, inherent worldly conditions to find, like, real lasting well-being.
Okay, so our mission here is to really unpack this. What are these worldly conditions according to the text? Why do they hit us so hard? And crucially, what's the actual method this source gives for getting a mind that isn't shaken by it all?
Yeah.
Because it says that kind of mind is the highest blessing, right?
That's exactly it. The highest blessing. So let's dive in. The source brings up this concept, Lokadhamma.
Lokadhamma.
Yeah. It basically translates to worldly conditions or worldly affairs. And the big point here is that these aren't just temporary things passing through. They're presented as, like, permanent fixtures. As long as the world's here, they're here.
Permanent fixtures.
Okay.
And there are specific ones listed.
8 of them, usually in 4 pairs. You've got gain and loss.
Right.
Fame and obscurity. Praise and blame. And finally, happiness and pain.
The big ones.
Definitely the big ones. And the source actually groups them. You've got the pleasant stuff at Dhammāna. They call it gain, fame, praise, happiness. The things we naturally want, right? The popular experiences.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then the flip side, anatheramana, loss, obscurity, blame, pain. The stuff we usually try pretty hard to avoid.
Right. But the source says these aren't personal.
Well,
That feels counterintuitive. Loss feels very personal.
it does, doesn't it? But the source really emphasizes this. They weren't made for you or against you. They're common property, you could say. Always been there, always will be. Not the properties of any particular person. So if you find yourself constantly thrown around by these 8, ecstatic with gain, crushed by loss, the source sees that as, well, maybe a lack of understanding or, more importantly, a lack of the right kind of inner practice.
So it's not about trying to stop loss from happening, because the text says that's impossible.
Pretty much, yeah. It's about changing your inner relationship to loss or gain or any of them.
Which brings us back to that core idea, the mind that isn't shaken by Lokadhamma. That's the goal, the most auspicious good fortune, the Maṅgala.
That's the peak, yeah, the ultimate blessing. And the source describes this unshaken mind using specific terms. There's asukha, meaning free from sorrow, not dried up, gloomy, or parched.
Right.
Then vertija, free from distress or dullness. The mind stays clear, bright, not dusty or clouded.
Clear and bright, okay.
And kima, that means security, brightness, like an inner safety, free from worry.
Wow. An unshaken, sorrow-free, clear, bright, secure mind. That sounds amazing. But how? How do you actually cultivate that?
Right, the how. This is where the source gets very practical, very specific.
Yeah.
The core instruction is about stilling the mind, making the mind stop. The source actually uses a Thai word, yit, which means exactly that. Stop, halt, bring the mind to stillness.
Stop it. Where? Is it like just clearing your thoughts? Because that feels vague.
No, it's much more precise than that. You focus the mind at the center of the Dhamma-sphere that brings about the human body.
Dhamma-sphere. Okay, unpack that a bit.
It gives this really vivid image. Picture a perfectly pure, clear sphere inside you, maybe the size of a chicken's egg yolk.
Got it.
Now imagine 2 lines, like fine threads, inside your body at your navel level. One goes straight from the navel back to your spine. The other goes straight across from your right side to your left side.
Okay, an intersection point.
Exactly. Right where those 2 imaginary threads cross, at the absolute center of that clear sphere. That specific point is where you focus the mind. That's the spot.
Just keep your attention there.
Keep it there. And this isn't just for when you're sitting meditating.
Oh.
No, the instruction is continuous. Keep on focusing the mind over and over until we get used to it and become skillful. You do it while sitting, standing, walking, lying down, eating, working, talking. Even, the text says, going to the toilet.
Wow, okay. So constant awareness, always gently bringing the mind back to that center spot.
Exactly. The source acknowledges the mind will wander like crazy at first. That's normal. The practice is just gently, persistently returning it to the center. And it says when you can finally make it stop there, you feel this real sense of delight.
Okay, so if you manage this, If the mind gets still at that center, what happens with the 8 worldly conditions? Do they just bounce off?
That's the idea. According to the source, when the mind is truly stilled there, the Lokadhamma gain, loss, fame, all of them, they just don't have the same power to, like, clash with the mind or stir it up.
They don't cause that deep suffering or anxiety.
Or that frantic grabbing or pushing away. Yeah, the mind becomes kind of immune to being seriously disturbed by them. They still happen externally, but the internal reaction changes fundamentally.
So that stillness is the direct route to those qualities you mentioned, asokha, viraja, kamma.
Exactly. The source connects them directly. Take asokha, freedom from sorrow. Sorrow, sokha, is described as that parched, gloomy, withered feeling, right? Often from loss or separation. When you still the mind at the center, the source says sokha immediately gets thinner, weaker. It can't really attack the mind through things like loss or blame anymore. The event might happen, but the sorrow doesn't take root and wither the mind if the mind is still.
Okay. And viraja, freedom from distress or dullness.
Well, an unstilled mind gets described as mournful or distressed, full of dullness or distress on various levels. It's almost like punishing yourself, the text suggests. It lacks clarity.
Right.
But a stilled mind, it stays clear and bright, free from distress and from dust. It just doesn't get gloomy because of what's happening outside.
And last one, kimmam, security, brightness.
The source uses a really nice analogy for this. It says the stilled mind is like seeing a clear, bright reflection of one's face, free from distortion, in a looking glass.
Ah, like a perfectly clear mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That state of clarity, security, no distortion, that is the blessing itself, the malaga uttamam. And here's something surprising the source adds, especially for, regular people, lay people. It claims that keeping the mind in this clear, bright, centered state can actually lead to, financial ease.
Really, financial ease.
Yeah. Money might flow in more easily, expenses might be unexpectedly low, provided the mind stays in that zone of security.
That's quite a claim.
Yeah.
Linking the inner state so directly to money.
It is, and it contrasts this with what it calls Maṅgala misfortune, which isn't just bad luck, but caused by a troubled, unstilled mind, or by chasing superficial things mistaken for blessings, like, heavy partying or drinking. The real blessing, the source argues, is this inner work.
Okay, so it helps with daily life, even finances potentially. But the source suggests the stillness practice goes deeper too, right? It's not just about handling gain and loss better.
Oh, much deeper. The discourse lays out a path. Through persistent, deep stillness at that center point, you can start to perceive, more refined states of being, like inner bodies.
Inner bodies.
Yeah. It starts with what's called the refined human body, sometimes called the dreaming body. It becomes clearly visible, accessible through this stillness practice.
And there are more after that.
Yes. It describes a whole progression. The mind stays anchored at the center of the current body sphere, and this naturally leads it through a sequence of associated spheres representing deeper concentration, wisdom, liberation stages, until the next, more refined body appears.
So it's a journey inward, level by level.
Exactly. It follows stages often talked about in Buddhist paths, leading towards higher states of purity. Eventually, the source says, you can reach levels like the Arahatta stage.
And as you go through these inner bodies, are you changing? Are things dropping away?
Absolutely. That's a key part. As you attain these more refined bodies, you're shedding layers of mental defilements, the things that cause suffering, the things that make us get shaken by Lokadhamma in the first place.
Like greed, anger.
Exactly. Things like covetousness, ill will, wrong views, greed, lofa, aversion, dosa, delusion, moha. They get progressively refined or totally eliminated at different stages of this inner journey until you reach the highest levels, like the refined Arahatta state, where all defilements are gone. The source uses the term samuccipahana, the complete cutting off, the eradication of all impurities.
And reaching that state is considered the end goal.
Within this teaching, yes, that's presented as the end of the spiritual tasks. The whole journey of purification through stillness is complete.
Wow. Okay, that sounds incredibly profound, but also like it requires a serious amount of effort.
Oh, definitely. The source doesn't soft pedal this. It stresses the practice needs to be taken as serious as life itself.
As serious as life itself.
Yeah, it's not a hobby. It explicitly mentions pushing through physical discomfort, soreness, tiredness, pain that comes up in practice. Giving up easily just stops progress.
But it is presented as possible for anyone. if they put in the work.
Yes, the path is laid out as attainable for anyone willing to commit with that level of seriousness and consistency.
Now, to kind of illustrate the potential here, the source includes a story, right, about a novice from the West.
It does, yeah. It's a pretty striking anecdote. Used to show the, well, almost unbelievable results that are claimed for this specific path of meditation. It tells of a Western novice who really dedicated himself to this stillness practice, progressing through the inner bodies.
And he reached a high level?
He reached the Arahatta level, according to the story.
And what happened then? What could he do?
Well, the story goes that through the deep insight and pure perception he gained at that level, he was able to perceive and actually communicate with his deceased father.
Wow. Communicate with his deceased father.
Yeah. And what he discovered through this direct perception was quite extraordinary. His father, the source says, had been reborn as the novice's own young daughter. She was about 10 at the time.
Reborn as his own daughter.
That's the story presented. It's used as this very specific, concrete example to highlight the kind of deep perception, the uncovering of things like rebirth, the tangible reality of what this meditative path is claimed to open up. It's shown as evidence of the practice's power described in the teaching.
Okay. So wrapping up this deep dive then.
Yeah.
The big message from this discourse, from this part of the Maṅgala Sutta, seems to be, look, the world's going to throw gain and loss, praise and blame at you constantly. That's just how it is.
Right, it's unavoidable.
But our suffering isn't just the events themselves, it's how our minds react, how we get shaken.
Exactly. And the highest blessing, the real key to well-being, is developing this inner state of stillness.
A stillness that lets the mind stay clear, stay secure, and just, not get totally knocked over by the Lokadhamma.
That's the core of it.
And the method is surprisingly specific. That focused stillness, right? The central point in the body, practiced not just on a cushion, but all the time.
That consistent, serious practice is what fuels the transformation, according to the source.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening, and for you. If these worldly ups and downs really are unavoidable, and if our main struggle is being tossed around by them, just imagine for a moment, what did it actually feel like? What did it feel like to meet gain without desperately clinging, or loss without that crushing despair? To face praise or blame with a mind that doesn't immediately inflate or deflate?
Yeah, what would it be like to genuinely cultivate that quiet self-center inside yourself, even just starting with moments here and there? Could that inward focus start to shift how you experience the world's flow?
Definitely something to think about, maybe even something to explore. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.